Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Oh,
We're the show that, tries to cut through the noise and get to the heart of these really critical roles and processes that, well, make the business world work.
exactly.
Today, we're diving deep into the world of the business analyst, the BA. It's fascinating, really crucial stuff. People I'd often say projects live or die based on how well this job gets done.
That's absolutely right. And for this deep dive, we've looked at a really comprehensive training guide. It's built for people starting out, like aspiring or junior BAs.
Okay.
And it pulls together best practices from all over. Think BABOK V3, that's the Business Analysis Body of Knowledge, PMI, the Project Management Institute, and other big professional BA groups. It's basically the playbook.
Right. So our mission for you listening in is to give you a solid grasp of things like requirement gathering, talking to stakeholders, the basics of project planning. Maybe you want to be a BA. Maybe you just want to figure out how successful projects actually, get off the ground. Think of this as a shortcut to understanding the why and the how behind getting projects delivered effectively.
Definitely.
Okay, so let's unpack this a bit. What is a business analyst? Like beyond the title, what's their actual role, their superpower on a team?
Well, at its core, the BA really is that crucial bridge. You've got the business stakeholders on one side, they know the problems, what's needed, and then the technical teams on the other, the ones building the thing. The BA's main job is to, first, really understand those business needs, then pull them out, elicit them, document them clearly, and check that they're right. Validate them.
Okay.
The ultimate goal, and this is so important, is making sure the right solution gets built. Not just building something, but building the valuable thing. It's about value, not just, checking boxes.
So ensuring value.
Exactly. And that means several key responsibilities fall on them. Identifying the actual business needs, the problems, getting stakeholders involved, making sure different groups collaborate,
Right.
defining requirements that are super clear, actionable, then later supporting testing, making sure users validate that what's built actually works for them, and keeping track of everything, traceability, governance. What's really interesting is they're not just writing things down, they're interpreting, they're negotiating, they're thinking strategically.
That bridge idea really works.
Yeah.
But tell me, isn't there a danger they just become like glorified order takers, just passing notes between the business side and the tech side?
Yeah.
How do they avoid that and actually be strategic?
That is a sharp question. And yeah, it's a common trap, especially for newer BAs. The way they level up is by not just hearing requests, but really digging into the why behind them.
Oh, the why.
Asking why over and over. Instead of just noting down build feature X, a strategic BA asks, okay, why do we need X? What problem does X actually solve? And how will we even know if X is successful once it's built?
Right, the metrics.
Exactly. It's about being a problem solver, driving value, not just being a scribe.
Got it. Building the right thing, not just any old
And
thing.
that clears it up.
Okay, so before we even get to the nitty-gritty of requirements, what are the first things a BA have to do when a project starts? You can't just dive into user stories straight away.
Oh, absolutely not. No. Step one is all about the project kickoff and getting stakeholder alignment. The main goal there, build trust, set clear expectations for how everyone's going to communicate.
Okay.
So you organize a kickoff meeting, get all the key players in the room, the sponsor, the person funding it, the product owner who represents the business side, the dev lead, QA lead, any subject matter experts or SMEs with that deep specific knowledge. And you talk about the communication rhythm. How often will we meet? How will we share updates? And crucially, what happens when things go wrong? The escalation path.
Right, who do you go to?
Exactly. And a really useful tool here is the RACI matrix. RACI. It spells out who is responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed for different tasks and decisions.
Oh, I've heard of that.
It brings so much clarity. Who makes the final call? Who's the tech lead? Who needs to test this? Who just needs to be kept in the loop? It defines all those roles.
Yeah, RCI sounds super helpful for clarity, but I've also heard sometimes it can, slow things down, get a bit bureaucratic. How do you make sure it actually helps and doesn't become a drag?
Good point. It really boils down to keeping it focused. Focus on the critical roles, the big decisions, the key deliverables. You don't need to RACI every single email,
Right,
It's for the high-level stuff. And, super important, everyone needs to agree on it at the start. And then you have to revisit it. If the team changes or the project scope shifts significantly, if people just see it as some static form they filled out once, it loses all its power.
Makes sense. Okay, so we know who's involved, how they'll work together. how do we get to the why? The real reason we're doing this project. Because without that why, things can get fuzzy fast, projects drift.
Exactly. That takes us to understanding the business need. This is the absolute core why behind everything. BAs have a few techniques here, things like business case analysis, doing a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats.
Okay.
Defining really clear problem statements, and using frameworks like GoTST, that's goals, objectives, strategy, and tactics.
GoTST.
Yeah, GoTST is great because it forces you to connect every single project activity directly back to the bigger business strategy. Ensures you're not just doing busy work. The documents coming out of this, maybe a business needs document, some strategic objective mapping, a problem solution fit chart, stuff that solidifies why we're doing this.
And then how do we measure if it actually worked, if the project's a success? Because if you don't define success up front, well, good luck hitting it. Seems like something people forget easily.
You are spot on. It absolutely is often forgotten. You have to define success criteria right at the beginning.
Okay.
And they need to be measurable, and everyone has to agree on them.
Right.
The source material had some good examples like cut down manual work by 60%, or boost customer onboarding by 25%, or maybe just meet the new regulatory standard.
Concrete stuff.
Exactly. And a fantastic tool for this is using SMART success metrics. Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound.
SMART goals, yeah.
Precisely. So instead of just saying, make the website faster, a SMART goal is something like, cut the average page load time by 2 seconds for 80% of our mobile users within the next quarter. See? Much more concrete, something you can actually aim for and check.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting, I think, and probably really challenging too. The core of the BA role, requirement gathering. How does something like the BABOK V3 guide this? It sounds complex.
It is complex, but BABOK provides a pretty clear framework. It outlines a 4-step elicitation process. Elicitation is just the fancy word for drawing out requirements.
Sure.
First step, prepare for elicitation. Plan your approach, figure out who you need to talk to, understand the context. Second, conduct elicitation. This is where you actually go out and gather the info using different methods.
Okay.
Third, confirm elicitation results. Super important. Check that what you heard is accurate, complete, and that everyone understands it the same way. And fourth, communicate and collaborate on findings. Share what you found, get formal agreement, make sure everyone's aligned.
That sounds like a solid process. So let's break down those techniques BAs use in step 2, the conducting part. There seem to be quite a few options. How do they pick the right tool for the job?
Well, the choice really depends on, the situation. Who are the stakeholders? What kind of information do you need? But yeah, experienced BAs have their go-to methods.
Like what?
Well, one-on-one interviews are great for deep dives. Getting detailed info, maybe stuff that's confidential, or knowledge that only one specific expert has.
Okay.
The real skill here isn't just listening, though. It's figuring out what people say they need versus what the actual underlying need is. You look for patterns, maybe inconsistencies, those unspoken frustrations. You'd usually record these, maybe send a summary back to confirm.
Makes sense.
Then you've got workshops, sometimes called JAD sessions, joint application development. These are live, facilitated meetings with people from different teams.
Cross-functional.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Fantastic for building agreement, figuring out the scope of features, defining that minimum viable product, the MVP.
Right. But workshops can get messy, can't they? Loud voices dominating.
Oh, for sure. That's where the BA's facilitation skills come in. A good BA guides the discussion, makes sure everyone gets heard, maybe uses anonymous voting tools or breaks people into smaller groups. You often see whiteboards covered in notes or digital tools being used.
Okay. What else is in the toolkit?
Well, if your stakeholders are spread out geographically or you need feedback from a lot of people on something specific, surveys and questionnaires work well. Good for confirming priorities across a big group.
Quantitative data.
Precisely. Then there's observation or job shadowing. This is where you actually watch people do their jobs, interact with the current systems.
Fly on the wall.
Kind of. It's brilliant for uncovering those little pain points or steps in a process that nobody wrote down anywhere. You document the ASIS, how things are now, maybe with screenshots, notes, quick videos. You find the hidden stuff.
I can see how that would be revealing.
Definitely. Then there's document analysis, digging through old system manuals, SOPs, procedures.
Sounds thrilling.
Well, it can be crucial, especially if you're replacing an old system or integrating things. You find existing business rules, compliance stuff that you absolutely cannot miss.
Okay, fair enough.
For projects heavy on user interface or experience, UI/UX prototyping or wireframing is key. You create mock-ups, visual layouts using tools like Figma, Balsamic.
So people can see it.
Exactly. Get feedback before you write any code. Saves a ton of rework. And finally, brainstorming. Just good old group idea generation, exploring new features, thinking outside the box, maybe using techniques like round robin or mind mapping.
That's quite a range. Are there common mistakes a newer BA might make here, like maybe just doing interviews and nothing else? Or misunderstanding what people say?
Absolutely. The interview trap is a big one, relying only on what people tell you one-on-one. You miss the group dynamics, the stuff you only see through observation or in a workshop. Another is not challenging assumptions, just taking everything at face value. A good BA probes asks why, validates, and a huge one for elicitation, forgetting to confirm the results. Always loop back and make sure you understood correctly. Is this what you meant?
Okay, so you've used these techniques, gathered all this information, which is probably messy and comes from lots of different places. How does the BA make sense of it all? Turn it into something the development team can actually use? What are the key documents, the artifacts?
Right. Translation time. The BA takes that raw input and crafts several core documents. Often you'll start with a business requirements document, BRD, high-level stuff, goals, context, stakeholder needs.
The big picture.
Yep. Then you might get more detailed with a functional requirements specification, FRS. This breaks down exactly what the system needs to do, function by function.
More granular.
Much more. You'll also see use cases or user stories. These describe how users will interact with the system. User stories are often in the format, as a type of user, I want some goal, so that some reason. Very action-oriented.
Common and agile, right?
Very common and agile, yeah. Then process flow diagrams. Visual maps showing the current workflow, the ASIS, and the proposed future workflow, the 2B, really helps visualize changes.
Visuals are good.
They are. And then a really critical one, especially if you're in, say, healthcare or finance, is the requirements traceability matrix.
Lucky M. Okay.
This thing tracks every single requirement through its whole life, links it to the original need, the design, the code, the test cases, even any bugs found later. It's like the project's DNA fingerprint, essential for audits and ensuring nothing gets dropped.
Wow, okay. That sounds intense but necessary.
It is. You'll also have things like a feature matrix or product backlog lists of features, often prioritized, and a glossary or data dictionary. Sounds simple, but defining terms clearly, what exactly does active customer mean, prevents so many misunderstandings later.
You mentioned mind mapping earlier under brainstorming. Could you expand on that? How do BAs use it? Sounds like it could be a real lifesaver with all this information flying around.
Oh, it absolutely can be. A mind map is basically a visual way to organize thoughts. You start with a central idea and branch out. For a BA, it's fantastic for taking all those notes from interviews or workshops and giving them structure.
How did it work in practice?
You might start with the main project goal in the center, say, improve customer onboarding. Then you create main branches for key areas like user registration, document upload, verification, welcome kit.
Okay.
Then off each of those, you add more detail. Under verification, you might have sub-branches for email verification, phone verification, ID check.
I see. It builds out.
Exactly. It helps you group related ideas, see connections, maybe even prioritize. You can use colors, icons. It turns a complex mess of information into something you can actually grasp visually. Great for brainstorming, defining scope, seeing how different parts fit together.
What tools do people use?
Lots of good ones. XMind Miro is very popular for collaborative whiteboarding, which includes mind mapping, MindMeister, Lucidchart. Plenty of digital options that make it easy to build and share.
Okay, so now we have this potentially huge list of documented requirements. How does the team, led by the BA, decide what actually gets built first? Resources are always limited. Stakeholders all want their thing prioritized. Sounds like negotiation central.
That's exactly right. This is where prioritization comes in, and it's crucial for defining the minimum viable product, MVP. What's the absolute core set of features we need to launch first to deliver value and get feedback versus what can wait for later releases post-MVP?
So how do you make those tough calls?
There are several techniques. A really common and useful one is the Moscow method. MOSCOW. It stands for must have, should have, could have, and won't have this time.
Must, should, could, won't. Okay.
It forces stakeholders to make clear distinctions. What's absolutely essential for launch versus what's nice to have.
I like that.
Yeah.
Simple but effective.
It is. Another good one is the Kano model. This looks at features based on how they affect customer satisfaction. There are basic needs stuff that has to be there, or people will be unhappy. Performance needs, where more is better, like speed. And excitement needs, the unexpected delighters that wow users.
Oh, the delighters.
Yeah. Understanding these helps prioritize features that will have the biggest positive impact. And one more, very practical, the $100 test.
$100 test.
Yeah, you give each key stakeholder, say, a fictional $100 budget. Then you show them the list of potential features and ask them to spend their money on the ones they value most.
Oh, interesting. Like a mini market.
Exactly. It's a quick way to see relative priorities and forces them to make trade-offs because they can't afford everything, really surfaces what they truly value most.
Okay. Requirements gathered, documented, prioritized. How does the BA make sure they're accurate? That they really capture the business need and aren't just, someone's wish list or a misunderstanding?
Validation. It's not a one-time thing. It's continuous. You use techniques like stakeholder walkthroughs, basically. Presenting the requirements back to them. Is this right? Did we miss anything?
Getting sign-off?
Kind of, but it's more collaborative than just sign-off. Also, peer reviews, having another BA look over the requirements can catch ambiguities or gaps.
Yeah.
Prototyping feedback sessions are huge, showing users the mock-ups and seeing if it actually meets their needs in practice. And always mapping requirements back to those original business goals we defined way back at the start. Does this feature actually help us achieve our objective?
The constant checking and refining.
Exactly, and that feeds into the documentation activities. Maintaining those documents, the BRD, FRS with version control so you know what changed when, using that RTM, the traceability matrix, to link every requirement to a test case. That proves it's testable and tracks its validation. And being disciplined about updating everything when changes inevitably happen. Again, that traceability is absolutely non-negotiable in regulated fields, healthcare, banking, government. You need that audit trail.
Makes sense. Okay, so beyond the requirements themselves, what about the bigger picture? The project structure?
Yeah.
The oversight? Because even perfect requirements can fail if the project itself isn't managed well.
Oh, absolutely. The BA plays a role here too, contributing to planning the scope, budget, timelines, and setting up good project governance.
How so?
Well, first, defining and getting agreement on clear scope boundaries. What's in the project, and just as importantly, what's out. Usually documented in a project scope statement, maybe with diagrams. This helps fight scope creep.
The dreaded scope creep.
The bane of many projects. Then there's the practical side, helping estimate resources. How many BA hours, developer hours, QA hours? What about infrastructure costs? Software licenses, external integrations, getting a realistic handle on budget and resources needed. And finally, establishing the project cadence and governance. This means setting up the regular meetings and processes that keep things transparent and aligned.
Like stand-ups and status reports.
Exactly. Things like daily stand-ups to quickly sync up and identify blockers, weekly status reports for leadership updates, maybe bi-weekly backlog grooming sessions where the team refines upcoming user stories, and perhaps a monthly steering committee meeting for big strategic decisions and removing major roadblocks.
So structure and rhythm.
Precisely. That structure keeps everyone informed, aligned, and helps the team tackle challenges proactively instead of reactively.
Okay. So pulling this all together, what does this deep dive mean for you, the listener? Whether you're actually building software, starting some new project, or maybe even just trying to get a complex personal goal organized.
Well, I think the big takeaway is that this whole process, requirement gathering, it's not just about writing stuff down. It's fundamentally about understanding the business context, anticipating problems or gaps, and crucially, getting all those different stakeholders aligned on a shared goal. The really great BAs, they aren't just scribes. They're strategic facilitators. They make clarity happen. And that drives real value.
How do they do that?
By asking the right questions, even the awkward ones. By being able to see the big picture through all the messy details. By finding that sweet spot between what the business wants and what's actually possible technically. Ultimately, they enable change, they enable progress just by bringing clarity.
This whole deep dive really underlines that success in almost any complex thing comes down to structured thinking and really clear communication, doesn't it?
It really does.
Translating those fuzzy ideas into concrete, actionable plans.
Exactly.
So here's a thought for you to take away. Think about how applying just one of these BA techniques could help you. Maybe defining SMART metrics for a personal goal you have. Or using that Moscow method must have, should have, could have to prioritize your own overwhelming to-do list. Or even just asking why 5 times to get to the root of a problem you're facing. What small step could you take, maybe even today, to bridge a communication gap, or to find a clearer outcome in your own work or even your life.